we have to start the show and the week talking about the situation in Hong Kong, where all flights have been canceled for the day due to those protests. Now, the protests, you might remember, are over mainland China's influence over the Hong Kong government, and thousands of anti-government activists have reportedly moved to the departure area of the Hong Kong airport. These protests have been going on for about 4 days. Meanwhile, the People's Bank of China continues to set the yuan lower, further devaluing the currency. Of course, with the escalating U.S.-China trade war, investors have been watching that dollar-yuan exchange rate very closely, and the falling yuan has been pretty good for the price of gold, and worth mentioning, Bitcoin as well. Always fun to talk about. So what do you make of everything going on right now? The protests obviously have very far-reaching kind of ripples. I also think that even though it's been 4 days, maybe not everyone even understands what's going on here and what's behind the protests, because they started in response to just one specific bill, I guess, or piece of legislation, but really they've broadened out and are about much more now.
Right, and this round of protests has been 4 days, but I mean, we have to remember that this has been, the underlying story has been playing out over several months, and even you could argue since 1997, really, when the territory of Hong Kong was transferred over from the UK to China. The Hong Kongese people have been trying to fight for freedom, and they've been worried over time that these types of bills, like the extradition bill, again, for those that don't know, it was a proposal to have anyone that was criminally prosecuted possibly just be sent back to mainland for trial. This has been a slow erosion of what the Hong Kongese people feel was their liberties that they had under British rule, and this changing tide is something that's been boiling over, and I think that we're really starting to see some of the hottest tension with the closure of the airport this morning.
It's about democracy.
Right, and there's just really no end in sight, because there could be one of two things that happens, right? Either the police mass arrest people, so that kind of slows down the protests, or they could have mainland China, Beijing, actually just send in the army and the military to stop everything. But those two situations likely will not play out. And so a lot of people are saying, well, okay, what happens from here on out in the next week, the next couple of weeks? Because there are far-reaching issues playing out right now. And we've seen a lot of the negative fallout from this, especially travel to Macau, where we're seeing a lot of casino players seeing
overseas Vegas.
Right. And that's exactly where a lot of the revenue has been coming in for that area. And so there's a lot of concern there as well.
We are showing live shots right now of that airport where all the flights have been, now I thought, canceled. So it's interesting to see all these people still there.
Well, I don't think these are the protesters.
Right, exactly.
The travelers.
But if they've canceled the flights, it's interesting that people are sitting there.
Well, because if they get up and they go, then maybe they could start resuming the flights, right? So, I mean, they need to keep it up.
But there's no timeline right now, right?
No, not for the time being.
At first I saw headlines saying grounded as if it was temporary, but now we're seeing canceled for the rest of the day.
Right.
I do believe that some flights were still coming in that morning, but I mean, these weren't even the craziest photos I saw. So I've flown through this airport a bunch of times. It is humongous. It is so huge. And to see this many people keeping it that densely occupied, despite the fact that there are no travelers, these are all just protesters. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
And I was following some live updates, and apparently the McDonald's that's located in Hong Kong is one of the only places where you can get water right now. So a lot of people are seeking refuge there.
In the airport?
In the airport.
Wow. Well, let's stick with China, because the ongoing U.S.-China trade war has also led Goldman, that is Goldman Sachs, to lower its Q4 forecast, as the bank now expects new tariffs to go through in September. As President Trump has threatened, Goldman also doesn't expect any trade deal to go through before the 2020 election. Not really what markets want to hear, although not really shocking, because with threats of a new tariff on September 1st, the new 10% tariff on additional goods from China, hard to believe that these two sides are going to come to the table and come to any new deal.
Right, and just looking at the different areas of the market that are being impacted, of course, by all of this, the semiconductors have been continuing to get hit, and we're going to hear a lot from NVIDIA and a couple others this week when they announce earnings, but also we have retailers reporting this week as well, like Macy's and Walmart, and this next round of tariffs is supposed to impact the consumer, so we'll get a lot of updates, I'm hoping, from management and what they foresee, especially as they look to change up their supply chains.
Although I feel like we also keep hearing about, for over a year now, soon the tariffs will really start to hit the U.S. consumer's wallet. It hasn't happened yet. Yes, it's a big story, but the average person has been able, in America, to kind of go about their business without really paying too much attention. But
again,
soon,
so far,
you're going to feel it.
Right.
But it still hasn't happened. But we still could hear, oh, soon, maybe the holiday season is when it'll happen. But that will be interesting to check the Walmart earnings. But we might still not really hear anything necessarily about the tariffs having an impact on the average Walmart shopper.
Right.